It's the journey, and today's journey, this guest is, well, a newbie to the podcast world. And yes, nerves can kick in, and more so when we can talk about their subject. Because our guest has dealt with chronic UTIs off and on for 15 years. But after getting COVID, which was the major pandemic, as you know, in 2022, their life changed forever. The infection became multi-drug resistant, and that led them down a crazy road of trying to navigate insurance, healthcare, multiple doctors who either gaslighted our guest or acted like I was suffering from anxiety. But as you know, UTIs are not anxiety. They just like to, and this is my loosest opinion because I have to remain neutral in this. Doctors like to say it's suffering when it's not suffering to make more money. And that's a really damning statement, but it's the fact of the matter because they just like to say, okay, it's that. If you're in America, you get charged for it. You go to another doctor, you get charged for that. So it's about them making money and it's about them making a profit, which is not right. But anyway, being turned away repeatedly, and that was how I guess felt, being rejected. But following the Lord and raising their son are the things that kept Targus going and peeling back the layers of trying to educate themselves on their condition and navigate. And it says, this is their words, a broken health system. So it does literally say that. And then our guest recently teamed up with Let's Talk UTI, and I will make sure there's a link with that in the description. And they are a patient advocacy group shining light on issues associated with UTIs, big and small, and supporting research and meaningful change. That's a nice bio, and it's a very poignant bio as I welcome Mary to her very first podcast.
Thank you. It's nice to be here today.
You're welcome. Now, obviously, I always like to know a bit about guests. I always read a bio. That does give me a rough idea, but I don't have any script.
hmm
Tell us your earliest memories, because obviously we're talking about UTIs. Can you tell us, and you can be explicit how you talk about it, because it does help people being educated about it. Can you tell us how it was when you first had the UTI? How did it make you feel?
Um, well, my experience may have been a little bit different than some, just because I was in college, which that doesn't make it unusual, but I was married at the time, and my degree, I'm a medical laboratory technician, and I worked in microbiology. And when we were in school, we were literally kind of at this point where we were talking about UTIs, and I'd never had one before, but I remember my professor, she was like, if you get a UTI, you need to get antibiotics immediately. Don't mess around because it can get in your kidneys and it can become septic and all this stuff. And while that is true, I I mean, it was one of those things that kind of like struck fear in me. I was like, oh my gosh, I hope I don't ever get one. And then, of course, there was no time later that I ended up with my first one. And I was like going to the doctor and like sweating bullets and thinking, like, oh my gosh, like this, I've got to get this taken care of because if I don't, then, it could be bad. So that was kind of the first one that I had, and uh, I know now that there are, and I'm not making medical suggestions or whatever, but there are a lot of women that just take cranberry or will take Hiprex or something like that to help them without jumping straight to antibiotics because that kind of led me down a spiral, and it just kind of got worse from there. But that first one, I just remember that fear from that professor in college who was just like, don't mess around, get it, go to the doctor immediately, like this is an emergency. And I was like, it really scared me.
So it
So,
struck the fear of God in you, literally.
yes.
And the fact is, I said it in the intro, and I even will say it now. Doctors like to palm it off and say it's a this and make it a quick solution.
Hmm.
They never really go into the full depth of what the issue is. Yes, they can give you this, or, can you pee in a cup, for example, and then dip a stick in it.
Hmm.
That doesn't give the full clear definition. Yes, it can give you the baseline, but how can you work from that? Because there's multiple probably underneath the top layer, what many people don't always see and talk about.
Right. Right. You're absolutely right. There was a professor in I think he was in London, who he's passed away now, but he had even, brought that up. He did research on UTIs for like 30 years, and his thing was just because you find a specific bacteria doesn't mean that's the bacteria that's causing the UTI, because we know now that bladders are not sterile. And like when I was in college, which was, I mean, if you think about it, it was just 15 years ago. It's not like I was, in college 50 years ago. It was just 15 years ago, and they were like, bladders are sterile, bladders are sterile. Well, now we know they're not.
Hmm.
And so just because you find something doesn't mean that is the thing that's actually causing the infection. And that, I think, is part of the problem where modern medicine maybe hasn't quite caught up with, the difference in a, like if someone has never had a UTI in their life, and they come in and they pee in a cup and it comes back and there's one bug, and the quantitative amount on it is very, very high, then, I would say that probably is what's causing it. Again, I'm not giving medical advice. I'm just, you know, saying
Opinion.
exactly, yes. But if someone like me who has had multiple UTIs over the years, and I know now that I have a biofilm problem, and that I have infection embedded in my bladder wall. Just because you see a bacteria in my urine doesn't mean that's what's causing the problem. And that's another thing where, you know, urology, well, I don't want to say urology, but just, as far as UTIs is just behind. It's, if you think about it, we've been doing the dipstick method for probably 50 years.
Hmm.
And it's, there are other things that we do in the lab that have changed, even just since I have been, working there. Like, PCR has come along, and genetic testing and stuff like that. But excuse me, but with UTIs, we're still just dependent on a dipstick. And if the dipstick is negative, sometimes they don't treat these patients and they still have a problem.
It's
So,
like it's like example I'll give, and I'm not relating to my past in any way, but there was this person I knew, and they had chronic UTIs,
okay.
and the fact was they went to the hospital. They said you got a UTI, went home, came back into the emergency department, the ER, whatever you want to call it, a few days later. You still got a UTI. Went back as a ambulance, transporting emergency. They found out it was something else, but the fact was they passed it off for so many things,
Right.
and then she had to be wheeled in on a stretcher to
Oh,
find out
good.
it was not a UTI. She had a major infection.
Mm, gracious.
And so she was in the local, and like I said, I'm trying to not associate this too much because it's my former wife, and I don't really, I wish her well if she does listen to this, but
Hmm.
I'm not with her now. But they passed it off so many times, and then she ended up in the local ER, and then a few hours later they said we're having to ship her to the biggest hospital because she needs major surgery.
Oh, goodness.
But the fact was they passed it off as a UTI in the beginning.
Right. Right.
Now, if they caught it early enough, the infection would have not been there from whatever caused the infection. But that's how it is. The system per se failed for those first few times that she thought the common ground was UTI.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, it's a it's a problem.
Yeah. And you touch upon about how your UTI is and the way you're drug resistant. Yes, you're drug resistant because you can't just go in there and move the infection to start again. So sadly, any medication you take, and it's how I see it, and I'm not a medical profession in any way either,
Mm.
but it just seems like it's not able to reach those places where it needs to go, and they need to develop medical research into getting that sort of thing where it can be hitting the right notes, but I don't think it will happen anytime soon.
You're on to something there because so we know
Yeah,
our
Finn,
own
yeah, we're back. We lost you slightly there on signal.
Oh, oh, okay. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here now.
Okay.
So you were saying,
Okay. So when we know that bacteria create their own biofilms, and we know that people create their own biofilms as well. Like we have biofilms all in our body for all different things.
hmm,
And when you put the two together, or even if you have more than one bacteria, they create this matrix of biofilm, and it's basically impenetrable. Like if you were to literally take some of this bacteria, put it on a stainless steel surface, and pour bleach on top of it, it won't die. The bleach can't get to it because it's literally encapsulated in this biofilm, if you will. And the bugs have gotten smarter. They have figured out ways to make antibiotics ineffective. And I mean, we have come out with, we've probably had 5 to 6 new antibiotics in the last year, maybe two. But a lot of those, not a lot of them, but some of them are in the same family as other drugs. And the thing is once you build resistance to one drug in a family, like for example, the fluoroquinolones, you got your moxifloxacin, your ofloxacin, your ciprofloxacin, your levofloxacin. Once you say you develop a resistance to levofloxacin, um, the resistance to the other three, it typically happens
hmm,
because it becomes a gene. The bacteria is like, oh, I've seen you before. I know you. I'm resistant to that. So some of these new drugs they are creating are still within the same families of drugs we've had for 50 years. So even though it's a brand new drug that you've never had, your bacteria is already resistant to it because the makeup of the drug is the same as one that it is resistant to.
yeah, and that's the saddest thing of all. Even when we touched upon it as well. You said about COVID.
Mm-hmm.
COVID, there were so many strains of it.
Yes, yes.
And when people thought it was, one strain, a new strain came in. So then they had to find that neutral middle ground. And in the end, they have found that happy medium ground. And luckily, the pandemic is not as major now. But if you do fall ill, people tend to say, oh, COVID automatically now, because that's
Right.
the new norm. But at the same time, what strain is it? Because there's so many strains of COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. It's that COVID, just for me personally, COVID is kind of what um, jump started everything with mine in that um, even, so I had UTIs off and on for 15 years. I'd never had a positive culture. Everything was always negative. And I even tested it at work and and it came back negative. I was like, well, I don't know what's going on here. And at the time, I didn't know what I know now so much about biofilms. But the I had done all this testing, and then I got COVID, and I ended up in the ER because I had like 104 fever and it wouldn't come down. And while I was in the ER, they were like, "Oh, by the way, you have a UTI," and I was like, "Really?" Because at that particular point, I don't think I'd had one in like 5 years. I hadn't had one since before I'd even gotten pregnant with my son. So I was like, "That's crazy. I don't have any symptoms right now." And they called me a couple days later, and I actually knew the doctor because I had worked with him, and he called me and he's like, "Mary, we got a problem." And I was like, "What's going on?" He's like, "You have got a really bad bug in your bladder." He's like, "Did you know you had this?" And I'm like, "No, I had no idea." And he's like, "Well, let's do some retesting." He's like, "Because this may be like somebody may have got mislabeled because I don't know about this." Well, I went and got it retested and it was correct. And I was just blown away. And because I had no idea. And I mean, I don't know that COVID triggered it, but to me, it felt like it did because after that initial culture, which was, just a few days post COVID, it was just mutating rapidly. I mean, rapidly. And I was not taking antibiotics at the time. I hadn't had antibiotics again probably since before my son was born. So I was like, what is happening? Like every time we test this thing, it's even more resistant, and I'm not even taking anything. And it was quite the roller coaster. And after that is when stuff got crazy with um, doctors and healthcare, and me finding out, just how really, I mean, how broken I feel like our system is.
Mm,
Because as a healthcare worker, I went to work every day wanting to help people, wanting to make a difference and, try to save lives. Like
yeah.
that was what I wanted to do. And then all of a sudden, um, I had a urologist who had no bedside manner. And she was just like, "This is your life now." And I'm like, "What do you mean this is my life now?" And like, just no real options. And she's like, "Well, we really need to get you to infectious disease." And I called my insurance company and I was like, "Please, send me a list of all the infectious disease doctors within like a 50-mile radius of me, and who's in my within my network." And they're like, "Yeah, sure." So they send me this list, and I called over 30 infectious disease doctors, and one by one they turned me down. So I was just really blown away by um by how all of this went down, because like in all of my time working at the hospital, I mean, I worked on the blood and tissue committee. I worked with some of the infectious disease doctors, with some of the patients that were like diabetics who had reoccurring wounds and stuff like that. And I mean, we saw some patients that were in a really bad way. And I never remember hearing a doctor just be like, "I can't help you. I can't help you." They were all like, "We're going to do everything we can."
Yeah, that
You know?
is that is their famous, I'm not saying it's infamous, but it's okay. We're here for you. We're here to help. That's the key words that patients always like to hear.
Yeah, I don't know. It was very rough trying to navigate that, and then trying to, find someone who would listen to me and would try to help me. So thankfully, I have hopefully found that gentleman.
Touch wood.
Yes, yes, it's a he had a he had a substantial wait list, so I'm talking to him now, so hopefully that'll be some help. But um, I well, another thing about our country, and this is kind of segueing into something a little bit different. Um, so I've not only, just talked to doctors in this country, I've literally talked to doctors in other countries. I talked to I'm afraid to even say what she is because I don't want people that live in this world, that live in the chronic UTI world. Well, they're going to know who I'm talking about. But um, there's a lady in Canada that I had spoken to. There was a gentleman in the UK I had spoken to. Um, I have done phage therapy from the Republic of Georgia, and I even went to Mexico and got a vaccine called Uromune. Um, all of these things that are not allowed really in the States
Because of FDA improvement and yeah.
yet. Yes. And that is another thing that really makes me crazy because we are the only, to my knowledge, and I don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure we're the only first world country that doesn't have a UTI vaccine. Um, I know the UK does, Spain does, Mexico does. I mean, everyone has, different. There's 6 or 7 different UTI vaccines that they
Hmm.
offer people that help boost their immune system if they, frequently get UTIs. And the U.S. doesn't have any. And I'm like, why are we so far behind on this?
Because America is one of the founding countries, you would think, and I'm keeping, like I always say, it's a neutral opinion. It's like they don't want to go into their pocket to invest money when they could put the money elsewhere. Now, that goes for anyone, whoever's in charge. It's about, I want to set this out because it will help people. They're not
Mm,
wanting to help people effectively if they're not looking at, oh, more money into this will be beneficial.
right, right. Yes, because I was even, and again, this is me just thinking out loud, like the vaccine that comes from Spain that you can get in Mexico, Uromune, it covers 4 different, is it 4 different bacteria that are the most common. Basically, it covers E. coli, Enterococcus, Klebsiella, and Proteus. And I was just thinking to myself, like, how much of a difference it would make if they say they gave this vaccine to people that were going into nursing homes. Because I can't remember the exact number, but the amount of patients in nursing homes that end up with UTIs, and it's a huge strain on the system, not just the nursing homes, but just UTIs in general. I think last year in the US, there was some $1.6 billion that was spent on UTIs between ER visits, doctor's offices, and excuse me, nursing homes, and just all these, different, you know, different places. And it's just, I'm like, why are y'all not doing anything to try to help with this? Um, Especially considering how multi drug resistance is on the rise.
Hmm.
And it's, the World Health Organization says that by the year 2050, we may not even be able to do simple things like knee replacements because, like I said, remember I said you can take the bacteria and put it on a stainless steel table and pour bleach on it. Well, they're kind of having that trouble now in hospitals in that the bacteria gets on the surfaces and they can't get it off, and they put another patient on that surface, and then the patient's got an infection.
Yeah, and I know for a fact when I had a job within a hospital, it was just basically cleaning, but it was a fact of you do this, you do this, and I was there during COVID.
Oh my goodness.
And the fact was, they said you got to, top to tail clean, and you got to do this. You had an
Mm-hmm.
8 hour shift, but in that 8 hour shift, if you're set in the ER, you could stay in the ER. But if you was all over, you had to be anywhere. But
Oh goodness.
the fact was, they gave you so many sprays, they gave you so many things to clean bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
People
Yeah.
still, people still came in with COVID.
Right.
So how can you completely clean it? Because, and even then, if it's not immediate, you had to, suit up in the respirator and make sure, but there was still that risk.
Yes, yes. It's
And I saw firsthand how it was in the ER emergency department, patients coming in. It was not fun.
no, no, it's not.
And then obviously some didn't make it. So then you had to be more of a high risk and protect yourself when you had to, because work this out, even though I was a basic custodian, janitor, whatever you want to call my title,
Hmm.
the hospital, they didn't have any porters, so they got security and whoever was in floor service for the cleaning to move the body.
Right. Oh my goodness.
So the system, I'm not saying that hospital was broken, but the fact was you was at risk even because
Hmm.
even though COVID and the patient died, God forgive whoever that died, but that COVID was still lingering,
Yes, absolutely.
and that's what many people think. Oh, COVID's in them, they died, COVID's gone. No, it's not. It's still
Oh.
there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, 100%.
So, we're going into the latter part now, and you're talking about you recently teamed up with Let's Talk UTI.
Yes.
Let's talk UTI and how accessible it is for females or even men to, I assume more females, but how can they talk about Let's Talk UTI?
Yeah, so Let's Talk UTI is it's a foundation. It was started by her name is Laura Helgeson, and it is to we're trying to spread awareness, to make meaningful change, to talk to people about common misconceptions, um, and trying to make, I already said meaningful change, but we're really trying to further education to make meaningful change. Um, Laura herself has been a long time, has struggled with UTIs like her whole life. And she's this is very near and dear to her. And it's very near and dear to me
Mm.
because I was like, somebody let me talk about this, because this is it's a situation when you've got 1 in 6 women having a UTI, and then you know within 6 months 1 in 4 of those will have a repeat, and they will become either chronic or recurrent. um, and then you just get on this merry-go-round of a wheel that you just can't seem to get off of, and then
Yeah.
quality of life just tanks and all that. But we're trying to get education out there. We're trying to, like I said, raise awareness, and doing some interviews, talking to people. And if you want to get on there and share your story, it's letstalkuti.org. Um, and we would love to hear from you.
And I'll make sure that's in the description afterwards. So the last question to end the journey, and I always like to end on a positive.
Sure.
The journey always going to be good or bad, but I want this to be good. What would you say to people to help them on their journey about understanding UTIs? Do you want to give them that message of hope that they're not alone?
Well, I have a message, I guess, for the people that are suffering, and that is, don't give up and don't stop. We are There are resources out there. There are Facebook groups full of thousands of people just like you who, so, not you, David, but to you who is listening, no, there are women and men that are struggling, and the different things that they are doing to try to help themselves, to try to help each other. um, this is a terrible, debilitating disease, and I mean, and I know people that don't get UTIs, or if they've just had one in their life, they probably don't understand. But once you go from acute to chronic, everything changes because like my symptoms change from day to day. And that's just the nature of the beast, if you
Yeah.
um I don't, knock on wood, I don't have the urgency and the frequency unless I am acute. But my like from hip bone to hip bone below the belly button, most days I feel like I've went round for round with Mike Tyson. Like
Uh,
I've just been pummeled, and I have bladder spasms, and it just, we're not going to get into all of it, but it's
it's not comfortable.
exactly. And I mean, it's made it where, like even with like my little boy going to soccer games, it hurts me to go to soccer games because I'm like, I gotta stand up, it's gonna, it's gonna hurt everything, and all that. But the I forgot where I was going with that, but the
But
people
the
there.
but the fact is, it's just really debilitating. But you're not alone. Is how I pick up on that.
Yes, you're not alone. We're uh, between us, and there's another group in the UK, Live UTI Free, and there's another group in Australia, and I'm sorry I can't remember that one's name right now, but uh,
It's
like,
easily foundable on Google. That's how I
yeah,
look at it.
yes, uh, but there are people that are out there that are rattling cages, so to speak.
and
And
that's what makes the difference, in my opinion.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Because um, this has been overlooked long enough.
Mm,
So,
I agree with that. But on that, I'd like to say, Mary, thank you for sharing your journey with us. I know it in so many ways for the people it does, and I'm not saying it in an intentional way, but it will impact someone's life and help them in a positive way to move forward.
well, good. I hope so. I hope so. And thank you so much for having me on here. And if anyone wants to look me up or look up Let's Talk UTI, Let's Talk UTI is letstalkuti.org. And if you want me, I'm on Twitter or X. I don't know what the kids are calling it these days. And
X, formerly known as Twitter, I think the term is.
right, right. I am Smiling M Farms. So I'm
Smiling and palms.
I'm brand new on there. So
Like this was your very first podcast, and I'd just like to say on that, you was amazing, and thank you for sharing your journey today.
yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Our thanks to our guest there for a wonderful journey. And now a couple of messages to share with you.
Hello, I am Ammie Harrison. I'm the author of the book Feline Warrior Part 1 and Part 2, a fictional story that is written in a poetic format that is based on real-life events that could happen to anyone and intended only for relatable purposes. This story claws into Catgirl's past abuse. Catgirl is human and part feline, but truly a warrior who can handle anything because she is strong and fierce. She has been taken advantage of for far too long. Join her on her journey as she reaches freedom. Here are some poems from Feline Warrior. Tears flow. I no longer know what to do. I am no longer who I once was, and it is because I made a choice to use my voice, and that is okay, because what I had to say was true, unlike me and you. Now I see. I am free. I am me. I am Catgirl. Ultimately, be you. Always stay true. Do what you want to do, because every day is made new. If you want to read more, visit the link in the description. Meow at you later.
Music by Erica R. from Pixar Bay.
By Tim Parsons. The narrator is Kate Barton. Director and producer, Darren Street. Tim Parsons would like to thank family and friends for their support with the paramedic Chris venture. The series is dedicated to the memory of his father, Reverend David Parsons. Copyright Tim Parsons 2020, all rights reserved. Unauthorized use, copying or sharing of this audiobook is strictly prohibited. This has been a Voice Reel studio production for Tim Parsons.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. I've just been listening to the Paramedic Chris children's books on audio again, and I just love it because they've given a tribute in one of them to my dad as well, who passed away a few years ago. I love audio books, and it's great to walk around, and it's great to sit at the computer, if you're out jogging or wherever, to listen to them as well. All 4 of the Paramedic Chris children's books are available on audio book from Amazon. Go and take a listen to them. You won't be disappointed. You'll hear what happens when a community pulls together and supports one another. The best thing is to pop over to my website, paramedicchriskidsbooks.org, and you'll see the links on the shop page. Keep safe, everyone, and thank you for being you.
The Journey podcast explores stories of personal growth, challenges, and life-changing moments. Each episode dives into unique experiences, offering insights and inspiration for listeners navigating their own paths. I believe everyone has a story worth sharing. If you'd like to share your journey with David and others, email your story to wisewords1983@reborn.com, and it may be featured in a future episode.